Hi guys, and today we're going to be reading Coyotes Lost and Found. Coyotes Lost and Found. To all the readers, young and old, who have asked me school visits and book signings and emails over the past 3 years, will you please write another coyote story? Here you go. Here's one for you. I hope you like it. Chapter 1. Sometimes stories start with a bang, and sometimes stories start with whispers, and sometimes stories start with a robbery, or a car chase, or fighting, or fist fighting, or someone being born, or someone dying. Sometimes stories start with a kin. The funny thing about stories is that they don't really start or stop at all. It's just the telling that starts or stops. And the story, it could start when me and my dad finally settled down for a bit and got off the road and into the house. Or it could have been when I started real school for the first time in 5 years, or heck, it could have started 6 years before that. When sometimes terrible happened, that the torn a hole in the universe, or at least felt like it did. But nah, I think this story starts with me on a bus finding a box. Now the bus wasn't moving at the time. And no, the box wasn't buried memory box. It was that's a whole different story. In a particular case, the bus was parked next to the house in Orchard, what I happened to live in, and the box held something almost as particular as memories. So here you go. Once upon a time, I was hanging out alone in an old bus. I was bored on the bus. The bus was named Yandere. It could be some folks didn't see they needed a name. They needed to name a bus. Then some folks haven't had a chance to get to know a bus as well as I have. Heck, me and my dad, who I like Eiley most just called Riddle Sense. That's what he liked to be called. Had lived on an old bus for 5 years. After a hole got turned into the universe, we wakened out of all seats except for one first couple row, and bolted in a couch and some sleeves and a big chair. We called the throne, and I even had a room in the back of the bed, and a curtain for a door and everything. Yandere was a weird Yandere. Was funky. And Yandere got looks everywhere we went, but Yandere was home. Even though I was the one who really wanted to settle down and stop living a Yandere in the first place. Once we finally stopped, rambled, and I had an actual house that didn't have wheels on it, so I didn't run extension cord out the strung pretty white Christmas lights all inside it, and it was kind of a home anyway, from a home, except it was parked right next to my home, So it really wasn't all that away. One particular March Sunday, then when this story started, I was laying there on the couch in the bus, half reading a book. My cat, Ivan, was laying on my chest, purring. When I scratched behind my ears, I shook my head and let my book drop. The ground beside me and tasked my tongue. It's not good, buddy, I said. Ivan opened his eyes and looked into mine. Ivan is a perfectly in a near every way, but one of his best perfections is how good of a listener he is. This book is perfectly fine, but there are too many flat out amazing books in the wood to waste time reading a perfectly fine one, right? Ivan yawned in agreement. I sighed and looked around. It would have been a great day to have a friend over. If you know, I have friends, not counting cats, but I didn't know counting cats. I saw Roden's bookshelves a little ways way, so I squatted Ivan down off me and ambered over the task book. Look, I knelt down, squinting my titles, hoping that someone would grab me. The Little Prince was a pretty good. Would grab me. Little Prince was a pretty great, but I like to read plenty same things with the Old Man and the Seal, and I know why the caged bird swings. Ivan sailed beside me, rubbed my hip, tail held high. I tattered paperback book of property by Cato Gilbert. I read some of it and dug it enough, but I was sure I was in the mood for property just right then. I grabbed it anyways, but as I did, Ivan rumbled hard on my elbows with his chin, and my hand went crooked, and instead of grabbing the book, I knocked it back. It fell with a muffled thump into the darkness between the shelf and the wall of the bus. Crud, I said, leaning forward to turn sideways to reach Bindy with one hand behind the shelf. Ivan came in close to my face, purring. "Stay out of this, cat," I grunted. I said, grunting. My fingers brushed against what I'm pretty sure was spine of a book, and I stuck my tongue out into the stretch farther and grabbed. But my fingers didn't close around the book. It was something else. It was the corners of edges, but it was bigger and heavier than the paperback book. I gripped it harder. I grabbed it harder. And pulled it up just before I slipped from my fingers. With a soiled thumb, I sat back on my knees and sliding toward me. Into the light, it was a box that looked like a briefcase. Without me handling Maddie of dark wood, with turning side metal at the corners, just small enough to fit the hidden space behind the shelf, but big enough that Ivan couldn't curl up inside it if it was open, which I'm sure it is the 100% what he would have tried to do. I sat there for a second, but looking at a box, it had a feeling to it. I felt a secret. I felt hidden. I felt important. It felt, to be honest, like once upon a time. And there was a fact. Yonder was not big. He wasn't that big. He was not that big. And it been home for 5 years. I've lived in a breathe and I lived in a breathe and slept and woke and eaten and laughed and cried in a cozy space. Between those 4 walls, I have never seen a box. I have never seen this box. I've never seen that box before. It was so secret. It was so hidden. It was hidden. And I was sure it was a heck. Wasn't my secret, which meant it had to be rodents and Roto. It was a lot of things, but Secret Keeper ain't really one of them. He was a type of brag about knowing productive a trip to the bathroom had been. What kind of secret would fella like to keep from a girl like me? Ivan rubbed his chin against the corner of the box, the way cats do. Shoo, shoo, I said, but my heart wasn't in it. I spun the box around and found 2 latches snapped shut. I swallowed, opening those latches, and curled and surely a step. There had been no coming back from a funny how life does that. Sometimes gives you a little warning, whispers a little promise. What do you think, Ivan? I said, in my voice. Rawr. Ivan said. Meow. Ivan said. He's not a big talker. Okay, I said. I bit my lip. If you say so. I snapped one of the latches. Ivan's ears perked out. Click. Holding my breath and undid it. For a second, the box sat there and unanswered a question. All that was left was to lift the lid. I took hold of the dusty wooden with both hands. I raised it up, and a soft yellow glow of Christmas lights flattered down into the box. The box was mostly filled, and it was mostly filled with gritty grass dust, and frowned. For a second, it took me a second to realize it wasn't dust in the secret box. It was ash. What in the... I started with a whisper, but then it hit me, and I knew it. I just knew it. Goosebumps strained up on my arms, and lumps grew dull and sharp at the same time. And my throat blinked, then again, against my sudden heat in my eyes. Oh, I whispered, "Hi, Mom." That's it for chapter 1. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.